Hi, and welcome back to a short presentation on the curriculum changes for CFA Level 1 for 2027. Last week, CFA Institute had actually come out with the curriculum changes, and let me tell you that 2027 is going to be exciting. And this is precisely the reason that why I have actually taken the gauntlet to, decode the curriculum changes in a more detailed manner, so the candidates may have an overview of what to expect going forward in 2027. Now, let me first tell you that this is a massive change that has happened, and this was actually on the cards for some time. And I could figure out a few of the reasons that, why it is so. Because first, to begin with, that level one hitherto really used to be a familiarization level. So people who would be jumping for their CFA journey would actually take the level one to get themselves familiarized with the different terminologies and different, perhaps, the jargons that the financial analysts use. But of course, that's not what the real world is all about. And precisely why the gap between CFA level 1 and CFA level 2 seems to be so utterly humongous. Now, typically, what happens is that it's been seen that more than 60% of the candidates actually drop out after their CFA level 1 failure. So, indeed, if you manage to somehow pass your CFA level 1, it seems that after that, majority of the candidates who do not pass CFA level 2, perhaps, after taking their second attempt, third attempt, or n number of attempts, they still do not manage to successfully pass the program. And that's precisely the reason where perhaps they have multi the idea that the gaps really is somewhat significant, and hence those relevant industry standards must be introduced at the entry level itself. I mean, you need to know how things do get done. I mean, you're going to learn the same models that we did, but of course, we were denied the opportunity at our time, wherein we could understand only how dynamically things move in the real world only when we took our level 2 or level 3. Now that's going to change. That's going to change. So in a way, it's good. This is for the serious candidates only. All right. So let me now take you through the changes. And to begin with, the majority of the changes, in fact, the all the changes that have actually had taken place have taken place across these three topic areas. So we have the equity, we have the quant methods, and we have the ethics area. These are the ones where the changes have actually taken place. The uh, rest of the topic area have relatively remained unchanged as they were in 2026. All right, so let's begin with the quantitative, and let's just rather give you first a brief summary of what to expect as far as the changes are concerned. So quant, I would divide it actually into five halves, how the changes have actually taken place. Now, let me first read you through the slide because that's important. That's going to give you a brief overview of what it's exactly going to be like. So, reorganized around real world applications, new content on simulation, Monte Carlo portfolio optimization, and a brand new reading on financial data and artificial intelligence oblique the large language model programs. Equities, on the other hand, are heavily updated with practical, career-ready content, covers financial statement forecasting, Porter's five forces, PESEL analysis. They have been heavily integrated, and a separate chapter has been dedicated towards the CAPM, that is the capital asset pricing model, and the other factor models, for example, APT. Ethics, on the other hand, has actually been broadened. Now, what I mean by broadened is that hitherto ethics, all these seven standards from 1 to 7, they were condensed into one learning module only. And now what has happened is that for each of these standard, you're going to have a separate, obviously, module dedicated, and each of this module is obviously going to have three dedicated LOs, starting with demonstrating the application of that particular standard, then recommended understanding the recommended practices for that particular standard, and procedures to prevent ethical violations, and third being identifying which are the standards that are conforming, and which are the acts rather that are conforming, and which are the acts that are not, as far as these standards are concerned, which means to spot the violation at the instance itself. That's what the the focus of ethics is going to be. And let me tell you, if this has been introduced in level 1, rest be assured that it is going to be no different as far as the level 2s and the level 3s are concerned. So candidates who are going to appear in 2027 for your level 2 and level 3, buckle up. Your ethics is also going to change. This has been in the cards for the last decade and a half. It has not changed. And now it's going to get simply more deeper, more relevant, and perhaps more integrated. All right. So let me now do a deep dive subject wise. Now, as I said before, when it comes to quant, and this is the first topic that I would want to touch base upon, I believe around close to 25 to 30% curriculum has actually undergone change as what it was in 2026. Now, there are a few chapters that have been dropped. There are a few readings that have been actually added, for especially the new reading on the financial data science, AI, large language models. So these are mostly going to be the vocabulary type of a chapter, which means that your effort towards this chapter is going to be less, but your ROI on these particular chapters are going to be more, because even if a couple of questions show up, I'm sure that you would be easily be able to breeze through these questions, because they're going to be at the rudimentary level. This is the first time that they're introducing, so I do not expect the model to be extremely hard or extremely deep to begin with. It's more likely the familiarization part in the first time around itself. But what is interesting is that the way I actually analyze how the quant subject has actually undergone change, I'm going to actually divide them into 5 parts, and those 5 parts are that they have become more practical. First, to begin with, they have become more practical and less of a theory. Now, what exactly do we mean by that is, they have uh, kind of integrated and borrowed concepts from equity. They have integrated and borrowed concepts from corporate finance. And good to know that the corporate issuers are now renamed back to corporate finance. It's a great thing to have happened, because this was the subject which was taught to us in our times, in level 1s and level 2s and level 3s as well. Now, in between, they had changed the corporate finance topic name to corporate issuer, and now they're back to corporate finance. So, okay, it's all up there, up in the air. We don't know in the first place that why did they change, but nonetheless, we are discussing about quants here. So quant topic area is going to heavily borrow from equity, from corporate finance, and a little bit of FSA as well. So first is, as I said, that it's going to be more practical oriented, and they're going to integrate across the other topic areas as well. When I say practical oriented, the point which I'm trying to make it that the days of simply plug and chug of a formula, plug and chug kind of a formula, those days are over. Simply you memorize the formula, rote memorization of the formula, and thereafter you see a problem and simply apply this formula and you get the result. Bang, you mark option C. Those days are over. Expect the questions to be more conceptual in nature. Next is that, this time around the quants is more focused, more lopsided towards the simulation techniques. So starting with the uh, historical simulation techniques, to the historical simulation. So I'm going to abbreviate them as HS. So you have the historical simulation, followed by the Monte Carlo simulation, followed by the bootstrap simulation. So all these simulation procedures and methods, you are now going to actually study in your Google worksheets or spreadsheet, or even learn them in your Python as well. In fact, that's what the CFA Institute actually would expect you to do. So be focused, may pay attention to the learning ecosystem. I'm sure that they're going to do a massive upgrade to the learning ecosystem as well, wherein they're going to embed these techniques perhaps through the tools of Python, or simple spreadsheets, Google or Microsoft spreadsheet. But nonetheless, you're going to learn about these techniques, that how they actually play out in the real world. The fourth change, where I believe is as I already said, that the plug and chug kind of thing. So those are completely out of the question. They are being dropped. And the fifth change is all about the new module that's being dedicated towards artificial intelligence and the data science part of it. So artificial intelligence, how it actually integrates, how they actually play major role in financial analysis, financial services world. You're going to get a brief introduction to that in your level one. And I believe this is a welcome move. This is obviously going to build you for the future as well, as we understand that simply relying upon studying certain equity analysis report or writing thesis page after page is not going to help, because that's not real world actually plays out. So you will need to make yourself abreast with the latest AI tools as well. So hold on, and don't forget, perhaps you would be required to make a pro subscription to your chat GPTs and Cloud A as well. Just kidding, but who knows. All right, so from here, yeah, so this is the summary slide that I've made for quants. Pause it, read it for yourself. I don't think that I need to read it for yourself. As they said before, this is what you should be expecting. This is what it is. Simulation gets a massive upgrade. Portfolio optimization, as I said, that it's borrowing concept from portfolio construction, and they're going to use Python and see that how they actually play out. New learning through AI and LLM, and yeah, that's about it. Don't rely fully on your formula memorization. That's not going to help anymore in quants. All right. So from quants now we move to equity portion, and let me tell you that this topic area, in my considered opinion, has actually undergone almost 30 to 35% change, if not more, if not more. I mean, think of it that three readings. These three readings have been dropped. Of course, some of it, for example, market or security market indexes are now being actually embedded in as part of quants. So, of course, this I would not say that it has completely been removed from the curriculum. Yes, it has been moved from equity to quants portion. But other than that, these two initial chapters, they have completely been dropped. I personally believe that there's a lot of fluff in these two chapters. Not that they are no longer relevant, but candidates could actually do good by studying something far superior to what they are. And in the bargain, you have now 6 additional chapters that are completely new. So for one word of caution out here, do not, and I repeat, do not rely on the 2026 or the older books or the older curriculum that you have. You would be up for big surprise. They're not going to help. You need to buy the new books for 2027, because 2026 or before books, they're just simply not going to do the job for you. 6 new chapters have been added. Now, you might argue that what's got to do with relative valuations? Do we not study relative valuation? Yes, we do study. Yes, we did study, but we did study relative valuation as part of equity valuation, where in the fundamental valuation, market multiples, they all were embedded into one learning module. This time around, the ones that we perhaps had studied in our level 2, the P ratios, the PEGs ratios, the price to book value ratio, and etc., they are going to have a dedicated chapter of their own. They're no longer going to be tied with one valuation chapter on equity. No, that's not what's going to happen. Second is your financial statement and forecasting. So financial statement and forecasting, of course, is what they're going to do is they're going to break it down at the line item level. And when they do, for example, if you're talking about revenue, we are talking about gross margin, we are talking about EBITDA, we are talking about, let's say, let's move to the balance sheet. So we're talking about the net working capital. We are talking about the capital spends. All right. So these are when we do valuation, when we do projection in the real world. So sometimes we do project them on a year-on-year basis, on a line item basis. So the revenue could be projected, let's say 15% a year-on-year basis for the next 5 years. Whereas the net working capital happens to be, for example, net working capital happens to be 20% of revenue increase every year. So an EBITDA is, say, prefixed at around, say, 10% or 50%. That's how real life forecasting actually happens. As a financial analyst in big banks, that's what you would be doing. So these line item based forecasting is heavily going to borrow from the FSA portion of your curriculum. So what equity has done is borrowed those concepts from the financial statement analysis and embedded them into your learning of equity, and then you would learn to project them in finance. So see, typically what happens in earlier, what you used to do, you would have certain DCF model, for example, the Gordon's growth model, DDM model was we talked, or you would have the FCFF model. So all that we used to do, at least in level one, is to simply use the formula, plug the figures, and boom, you get the answer. No longer that's going to be the thing. You need to understand them at the line item level. You need to understand them and should be able to project them holistically, consistently at the line item level. That's what the CFA Institute expects out of you. Industry and competitive analysis, again, this is nothing new, but what has happened is there is a lot of repackaging that has happened with the forward integration, or I would say with the expansion on the PESTLE and the Porter analysis. And yeah, one important aspect that I wanted to touch base upon is candidates are now expected to read and glean out information from the equity analysis research report. You should know how a buy side equity analyst and a sell side equity analyst, how they differ when they write reports. What's their objective? How do they do it? How to glean out those specific information that's relevant. Because when all that you know, you may understand that a research report might run into hundreds of pages. We don't know, or it could be as brief as only a 5 page or even 20 page. But you should be able to read them, just not be a robot anymore. Because your job, if you just want to behave like a robot, then I can assure you that your job is no longer safe, because the AI tools can do much better at that. You are required to apply your cognitive thinking, and those cognitive thinking can only be developed once you have a thorough understanding, or at least build on reading those research reports, and at least understand how to write those research reports. So CF Institute has again, they have dedicated a whole chapter on the equity analysis research report, and let me tell you, this is going to be one of the star campaigner as far as level one is concerned. Again, another thing which is of significance is that the market factor models. Now, as I said, that if you think of the CAPM model, so we all know the CAPM model is the risk-free rate of return plus a scale factor of beta multiplied by with the market risk premium, and that's what the required rate of return for a given equity. That's how we define. And again, as before, this used to be one tiny itsy bitsy piece which was integrated into the chapter on equity valuation or required rate of return. No longer that. No longer that. They have a dedicated chapter which otherwise you would have had to study in your level two. Now they have brought some of the concepts from level two to level one, so that your foundation becomes a strong, so that when you come to level two, these things should come to you as breeze. These should not surprise you. So the market factor models, for example, the arbitrage portfolio theory, multi-factor portfolio theory, pharma French theory, and other economic reports, Taylor's expansion, CAPM. So they've got a specific dedicated chapters for that. How good is that? How good is that? I mean, let me tell you, if I were in your position and if I find somebody actually who have actually passed CFA level one, uh, you know, with a decent marks, with a decent, now that they also approximate the marks as well. So with decent marks, if they passed on this syllabus, on this curriculum, I would not hesitate to hire that candidate in my company and give him or her the junior research position. All right. So that's what, in a nutshell, that you need to focus upon as far as the equities are concerned. Again, at the cost of repetition, 3 chapters have been dropped. 6 new chapters have been introduced, and the theme or the focus is pretty wide. The candidates are required to study the equity research analysis report, understand different industries, how those different industries actually behave, how to read through the reports of different sectors, whether it's for airlines, pharma, etc. And then understand the scenario analysis. When we project the cash flows, when we project the valuation report, we obviously do not make only a one snapshot kind of report. We give them, typically the way it happens is, at least I could recall from my days when I was required to present, forecast certain valuation report or certain cash flow projection. So we always used to give at least 3 scenarios. So how those scenarios would play out? Well, you could guess it right. The most likely scenario, the best case scenario, and the worst case scenario. So under all these 3 circumstances, we were supposed to give our update. We are supposed to give our view. This is what is expected at level 1. Can you believe that? It's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. All right, so let me just give you a little bit more, sprinkle a little bit more that what to expect as far as equity is concerned. We discussed heavily on quants. So, overview of equity security, how to distinguish between domestic and international security, voting rights, public versus private voting rights, and what is the process of voting rights, how the ethical governance comes into picture. This is going to be one of the major learning outcome statement. Emphasis on the sources of return, for example, dividends, stock splits, share buyback, then bonus shares. So under all these circumstances, you need to understand that how it affects the common stockholder. What are the sources of those return? How would they play out? Uh, Relative valuation, I already discussed that there is a separate chapter been dedicated towards that. A lot of concepts of FSA has been brought into equity. A lot of concepts of equity has been brought into quants. We already talked about that. So that's what it is all about. All right. So now, uh, three heavyweights. We already discussed a couple of them. Quant, around 25% changes, has become more practical, right? And not only more practical, it has become more integrated, more integrated. And we have new learnings in AI and data science. All right. Equity, the theme is they're expecting you to be behaving like a junior analyst from day one itself. So no longer plug and chug kind of things are not going to work. So you're, oops, yeah. So your plug and chug kind of formulaic questions, say goodbye to them. They're not going to show up. Not anymore. I believe not in the bulk that they would have in your level one. Now, I want you to pause this portion of the video and read it through. This is the gist. These are the summaries. If you approach your equity in 2027 in this manner, I can assure you that things are only going to get better. All right. So coming to the last portion of ethics, ethics really has not undergone much of change, except for the fact that which I discussed in the very first place, that each of the standard has now it's a separate module. Earlier, what used to happen is that the standards practice of handbook, standards practice of handbook used to have from chapter standard 1 to 7 all consolidated under one LO. No longer that is the case. Each of the standard is going to have its own LO and own module dedicated. But the good part with ethics is, which I believe is a great thing to have happened, that JIPS has been completely removed. Frankly, I could never understand that why at level one, somebody would actually require to study JIPS. Not required. JIPS is required. Perhaps it's great to have JIPS in level three when you actually go to study portfolio management and you are to evaluate the fund or the portfolio manager at large. At that particular point in time, JIPS is great. At those levels, JIPS is great. Not at level one. Makes no sense. So they did the right thing by removing JIPS. It is a big headache. All right. So I hope that through this is the summary slide. I want you to, again, I'm not going to read these things separately other than what I would want to caution you about, that, the reading across the AI LLM, they're going to be absolutely sitting ducks. Let me tell you that. So don't skip them. This is going to get you those brownie points, wherein your effort will be minimum, yet you're going to get the best of the results because these are introductory level. Equities, as I stated, now you should expect a vignette type question as well, which are typical of your level two. They might show up those kind of questions in level one as well. Who knows? Ethics, yeah, well, more or less there are some same. The standards haven't changed. They will never change. What has only happened that they have become more siloed, more compartmentalized, and at the same time, they would expect the depth of the question to actually really be testing. And the good part is that JIPS is removed. So I hope that through this brief, or I would say with expansive presentation brought to you by Charter Series, you would be now in a good position to start your 2027. Should you feel any need of any help from Charter Series, do not forget to reach out to us at a www.charterseries.com. All the contact details are mentioned there. I implore all of you that please do visit and reach out to us for any help. And one good news again, before this year ends, and perhaps before we begin the last quarter of this year, I might actually be publishing the videos on all these three topic areas, the heavyweights, which are going to now the changes where almost 50% of these topic areas where have actually changed, because these all three are heavyweights. Quant is a heavyweight in level 1, equity is definitely a heavyweight, and so is ethics. So what I plan to do is that free of cost, I'm going to upload those changed curriculum videos so that candidates have it easy. Thank you so much, and stay tuned and be standing with Charter Series, as Charter Series will be standing with you. Thank you so much.